Next, the video tries to prove that Muhammad was a genuine prophet. Now, that's going to be difficult because the Quran says Muhammad did not perform any miracles. The Quran even describes people objecting to Muhammad because he did not perform miracles to validate his prophetic claims. It says in Surah 10:20, they ask, "Why has no other sign been sent down to him from his Lord?" Say, O Prophet, the knowledge of the unseen is with Allah alone. So wait, I too am waiting with you. However, Jesus Christ validated his message with miracles. In John 10:37-38, Jesus said, "If I am not doing the works of my Father, then do not believe me. But if I do them, even though you do not believe me, believe the works, that you may know and understand that the Father is in me, and I am in the Father." And the ultimate proof of Christ's divinity was his work of rising from the dead, which is a kind of miracle that Islam completely lacks. And since Islam denies the resurrection of Christ, I have to deny Islam, because the evidence convinces me that Jesus Christ rose from the dead. Now, I'm not going to defend that fact in this episode. You can check out other debates and episodes where I have done that. But even if I were not a Christian, as I said earlier, I still would not be convinced of Islam. Now, Muslim apologists claim Muhammad did perform miracles. Some claim this, based on later oral traditions. People like Sheikh Uthman, who say that Muhammad split the moon in two and that this miracle can be known historically. Check out my episode on that in the description link below. But I will add one detail I did not mention in that original episode. So something like that may have happened to Muhammad and other witnesses, but it has a natural explanation. Then you might be thinking, what would cause Muhammad and his companions to think that Muhammad had split the moon in two? Well, on June 18th in the year 1178, 5 monks in Canterbury, England, claimed they saw the moon split. They said the upper horn of the moon split in two, and a flaming torch sprang up, spewing out over a considerable distance fire, hot coals, and sparks. Scientists today, some say that the monks saw an asteroid hit the moon or a meteor explode in the atmosphere at just the right angle so that the moon was also in their line of sight, and it appeared that the explosion happened on the moon's surface. So that may have been what happened to Muhammad and his companions, unless the story is just completely made up because it's a later oral tradition. So no, Muhammad did not split the moon or perform any other miracles. Most Muslims don't even rely on that to try to prove he was a prophet. This video certainly doesn't. Do we have other reasons, though, to think Muhammad was a genuine prophet, even though he didn't perform any miracles? Let's see.
His life is so well documented because of the impact he had on his people. We know things like how he used to eat and even the position he used to sleep. It wouldn't be far from accurate to say that we know more about him than any other historical figure.
If you think about that claim for more than 5 seconds, you can see it's not true at all. The Quran has hardly any information about Muhammad, and the first biography about him was not written until about 100 years after his death. The fact that there are books arguing that Muhammad never existed shows we have less information about him than many other historical figures who no one doubts. Now, I think Muhammad did exist, but the fact is, it's absurd to say we have more information about him than any other historical figure. In fact, some Muslim apologists have even adopted a view called Quranism. It's a kind of Muslim sola scriptura that restricts Muslim beliefs to the Quran alone and rejects the Hadith and later traditions as being unreliable. By the same way, Christians also make this error when they make claims like, we have more evidence for Jesus than for anyone else in ancient history, which is not true. We have more evidence for Roman emperors and well-published philosophers, but it doesn't matter. We have sufficient evidence to believe that Jesus Christ existed and that he made radical divine claims about himself and that his followers claimed to have seen him alive after his crucifixion. And this evidence is far better than the evidence we have for Muhammad, because it at least comes from within the lifetime of Jesus' followers. The same cannot be said of the sources for Muhammad that sometimes come centuries later. But look, even if we had a perfect record of Muhammad's life, that in and of itself would not prove he was a prophet rather than just a unique figure of his own time period, because Muhammad never performed any miracles or did anything to show that he was a prophet who had divine authority rather than just a charismatic human leader.
All of this information literally invites us to study his life and make a rational decision to see if he was actually a prophet or not. There are three possibilities for this claim. Either he was lying, or he was mad, or he was telling the truth.
Ah, yes, Lord, liar, or lunatic, right? That's the classic trilemma from C.S. Lewis. In this case, I guess it would be prophet, liar, or lunatic. But the trilemma would work. It works for Jesus, but it does not work for Muhammad. Muhammad claimed that God spoke to him. Jesus claimed to be God. It's not that crazy to think God spoke to you. Lots of sane people think God speaks to them in prayer through their own inner monologue or inner thoughts. But thinking you are God is, as C.S. Lewis put it, like thinking you were a poached egg. Muhammad could have just been sincerely mistaken. Just as Muslims would have to say the same thing about other sane people throughout history, and even up to the present day, who think that God revealed something to them through a charismatic prayer or some other religious experience. On a side note, Muslims believe that the Bible is a part of divine revelation, but that it was corrupted. So they say Jesus, yes, he was miraculously born, but they also say that Jesus never claimed to be God, was not crucified, and did not rise from the dead, believing that comes from corrupted elements in the New Testament documents, not from the originals that come from God and being a part of divine revelation. Muslims love to quote critical scholars like Bart Ehrman to try and show that the Bible was corrupted. But they don't point out that even critical scholars like Bart Ehrman agree that parts of the original text of the Bible, like the Gospel of John, for example, do teach that Jesus is God, which contradicts Islam, of course. So let's continue with the Muslim trilemma for Muhammad.
The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, received the first revelation from God at the age of 40. This means he lived a completely normal life for 40 years before becoming a prophet. In these 40 years, he built a reputation in his community, and they literally nicknamed him the Truthful and the Trustworthy. He was known to have never told a single lie. Think about it. 40 years of sincerity, and then to suddenly come up with a monumental lie like being a prophet doesn't make any logical sense.
The claim that Muhammad never lied comes from a hadith written 200 years after he died. The Quran itself suggests that some people did accuse Muhammad of lying about God. One translation of Surah 35:4 says, "If they call you a liar, prophet, many messengers before you were also called liars. It is to God that all things will be returned." One modern commentator says the meaning of the verse is about those who accuse you, Muhammad, of having made a false claim to prophethood. Besides, lots of other founders of religions led normal, well-respected lives before claiming God spoke to them. But Muslims don't believe their testimonies. Finally, as I said before, Muhammad could have just been sincerely mistaken about the source of what he thought was divine revelation. Keep in mind that Muhammad did not have an experience where an angel showed him all the contents of the Quran, which is about 77,000 words long, in one sitting. Muhammad progressively recited what he claimed to have received over the course of 23 years to his companions who wrote that down. That's more than enough time to convince yourself God is speaking to you and slowly recite what you think God is saying.
The Prophet was also known to have so much wisdom, and his character was impeccable. People used to race to serve him in any way they could. Muslims and non-Muslims turned to him for advice, and he never said no to any request. These are not qualities of someone that is mad.
First, a lot of this testimony is historically suspect, so it's not great to build your religion on it. Second, as I said before, you could be sincerely mistaken, not insane. Or you could be a high-functioning, deluded person. Or you could have some combination of innate wisdom, even if we grant this, and delusions of grandeur. None of this demands a supernatural explanation. Jesus, in contrast, did not act like a prophet or an alleged prophet like Muhammad. He didn't act like someone who pointed to God as his ultimate authority. Jesus pointed to himself often. Jesus said that he was an ultimate authority because of his radical, unique relationship to God. He said that he was the way, the truth, the life, the one who came into the world, the one who would judge the world. In the parable of the wicked tenants, which most critical scholars believe to be authentic, Jesus identifies not with the servants who symbolize God's prophets, but the son of the vineyard owner, the Son of God. So while Muslims often claim that Jesus was another prophet, just like Moses and Muhammad is the final prophet, Jesus certainly did not act like a prophet. He performed miracles on his own authority and claimed not just to be a prophet of God, but to be the unique, only begotten Son of God.
Perhaps the biggest proof for me is that the prophet could not read or write, had no educational background, yet was able to bring forth the Quran that remains the best literature the world has seen even after 1400 years. Logically, this is enough to verify his prophethood.
Muhammad didn't have to be able to read or write if he had heard enough Arabic poetry in his life and other religious texts, including Christian ones, and then be able to recite something of his own. And as I noted before, Muhammad had a long period of time to develop these thoughts. The Quran records that people were skeptical of Muhammad because of that fact, because it took 23 years to recite. Surah 25:32 says this: "The disbelievers say, if only the Quran had been sent down to him all at once. We have sent it as such in stages, so we may reassure your heart with it. And we have revealed it at a deliberate pace." End quote. Sure you have. This reminds me of how Doctrine and Covenants, one of the holy texts of Mormonism, explains away a problem related to the Book of Mormon. While Joseph Smith was allegedly translating the golden plates, 116 pages of the translation were lost. Doctrine and Covenants says that God told Joseph not to retranslate those plates because this was allegedly a trap the devil set through Smith's enemies. It says, "The devil has sought to lay a cunning plan, that he may destroy this work. For he hath put into their hearts to do this, that by lying they may say they have caught you in the words which you have pretended to translate." End quote. The problem is that if the original 116 pages were found and were compared to Smith's new translation, it would show that they didn't exactly line up. And so people would accuse him of not being a prophet, but just someone who is reciting a story. And so because they're reciting it from memory, it's going to be a little bit different every time. So to avoid this, God allegedly told Joseph Smith to translate that part of the Book of Mormon from a different abridged set of golden plates that would tell the same story, but it would sound a little bit different. That would explain that in case the original 116 pages were ever found. Something similar may be going on here in the Quran to explain why Muhammad took so long to recite the Quran to people, to explain why this process took place over such a period, whether he was sincerely giving something that he thought was divine revelation or insincerely doing it.